Did you receive a phone call from a detective? Did a detective show up at your house? Are they wanting you to answer questions about a criminal investigation? Hi, I'm Jeff Hampton with the Hampton Law Firm. Today I want to talk to you about 5 steps you must take if you are under criminal investigation. By the way, if you wait around to the end of the video, I'll give you a free ebook, What to Do If You Have Been Charged with a Crime in Texas. So let's jump into this. Let's say you get a phone call. This happens all the time. I deal with people day in and day out. They'll pick up the phone. All of a sudden, there's a detective on the other end. The detective begins to say, hey, listen, I got a couple of questions for you. They're not going to tell you initially that you're under investigation. They're going to say, I got a couple of questions for you about some event or some incident back on, whatever date it was. Do you remember being at this location? And they'll just jump right into it. They'll start asking you questions. Do you have to answer their questions over the phone? What are the consequences if you do answer their questions over the phone? What if they want you to meet up with them to do a formal interview? What should you do? How do you know if you're actually being investigated when you receive that phone call? Rule number one, do not talk to the detective about anything over the phone or in person. When in doubt, just understand you're being investigated. Think about this for a second. Why would a criminal investigator, why would a detective take the time to call you and ask you questions if they weren't looking to do something to you? In fact, if you are a witness to an incident and they're only calling you to get your witness statement, they usually tell you that right out of the gate. They're going to say, hey, listen, we understand you were a witness to a crime back on such date. We just wanted to get your account of what you saw as a witness. But if they start calling you, asking you, I've got a few questions for you, a few things I wanted to run by you, can you answer a few questions for us? Are you willing to meet up with us? Or are you willing to tell your side of the story? They'll tend to say that. Understand they're not really interested in that. So I want you to realize this right away. Here's what you do. In that moment, the detective calls you and says, hey, I need to ask you a few questions. You politely tell the officer you would be happy to answer his or her questions with your lawyer present. And in fact, you'll be having your attorney give them a call so that you can schedule that time. Why is this good? Well, number one, it doesn't mean you're not willing to cooperate, but it means you don't know your legal rights. It means you don't know exactly what your next steps should be. So you are relying upon an attorney who knows what your rights are to help give you guidance on that. Listen, every person in the United States has a constitutional right under the 6th Amendment to have counsel. So you shouldn't be ashamed of that at all. So you can exercise that 6th Amendment right to counsel, and in the process of doing so, you're going to eliminate the possibility that a detective is going to be able to continue to ask you questions and try to manipulate, change, or misinterpret what you're saying in any future communications, okay? So tell the detective you're willing to answer all those questions, but you need to have your attorney present. Be polite about it, all right? Why? Because everything you say to that detective will be used against you over the phone. So what if you try to start answering a few basic, simple questions? The detective interprets that however he wants it, and now all of a sudden that's being written down as a confession. It's an admission by someone under an investigation that can be used against you to go get an arrest warrant, okay? So it's really important, particularly if you are innocent, resist the temptation to try to clear your name, okay? Because it doesn't really work that way. Many detectives are not really interested in your side of the events. They've already drawn a conclusion and they're interested in gleaning information from you to fit their version of the events, okay? So rule number one, do not talk to the detective about anything over the phone or about anything about an investigation over the phone or in person. Rule number two, don't believe that the detective only really wants to hear your side of the story. And the reason why I'm telling you that is detectives are trained to come at you just like that. Hey buddy, I'm just reaching out to you. I want to hear your side of the story. I heard from such and such over here. I'm not even sure that you did anything wrong. I just want you to help clear this up for me. Give me a few explanations for this issue right here, and I'm sure we can be on our way. First of all, that is not what they want. They are not really interested in you telling your side of the story. Detectives are trained to have someone feel comfortable with the discussion back and forth during an investigation. They're also trained to say they want to hear your side of the story, but in reality, if you go and you meet with them, they're going to interrogate you. It's going to be a list of closed questions that they're going to ask you where they already have information from an alleged victim or other so-called witnesses. They are going to push this information on you, looking to see how you respond. So let's say they come to you and they say, we already know this information because we've already talked to this witness. So it's going to be better for you if you just tell us that that's what happened, right? How are you going to say, well, no, that's not what happened. They've misunderstood. They're writing down, defendant is being resistant. Their body language appears that they're hiding something from me. This is the type of stuff that takes place when you go and you meet with a detective. So understand they are not really interested in hearing your side of the story. So rule number 1, do not talk to the detective about anything over the phone or in person. Rule number 2, do not believe that the detective only wants to hear your side of the story. Rule number 3, be careful talking about the facts to anyone else during a criminal investigation. And what I mean by that is, what if some sort of incident did take place and you didn't do anything wrong, but you go and start talking to other people who are also present, maybe other witnesses to an incident that took place. Now all of a sudden you're sharing information with them, and here's what happens. Detectives will go interview other witnesses. They'll go talk to other people. So in the process, what do you think they're doing? They're asking those other witnesses, hey, did you ever talk to this person? Yeah, actually I talked to him just the other day. Oh, you did? What did they say? Now that individual can say information about you that maybe on its surface looks like it would be hearsay, which it is, but now it's an exception to that hearsay because it's an admission. You're actually supposedly admitting things to this other witness. That detective could take that information down, try to use that against you in some way. So it's very important to understand, what if these other witnesses have something to gain from this? What if they are the ones who were actually at fault and culpable in the situation? Now they might lie against you. They could misinterpret what you say. They could twist and manipulate what you say. So very important about that. Be careful who else you talk to if you're under an investigation. That's rule number 3. Rule number 4, filter all of your communication through an experienced criminal attorney. Why? Because everything you say can be used against you. It's incriminating against you. Not just talking to the detective or the police, but everything you say to anyone else. Okay? So it's very important to understand, every time you open your mouth, if you're under an investigation, you're putting yourself at risk because someone could twist and turn that and manipulate that into something supposedly that you're admitting to. But everything your attorney says is hearsay. So that means if your attorney begins to call and check into these issues, talk to the detective, interview witnesses, these are things that cannot be used against you because what your attorney says is hearsay, not usable against you in court. You're protecting yourself. You've exercised your 6th Amendment right. To an attorney, you've exercised your 5th Amendment right not to have to talk about these things. And as part of exercising that 6th Amendment right, your attorney can be your mouthpiece. Okay, your attorney can be the one who does the talking for you. So, and here's the other thing. What if you have an investigator or a detective who's not being fair? What if they're actually they've already made a decision, they think you're guilty from the get-go? Well, you can have your attorney jumping into this thing, talking to that investigator and detective, and that can sometimes be used against the detective later. And what I mean by that is we've had cases that have gone to trial, and we're able to really go in and have a really in-depth discussion at the jury trial and cross-examination, being able to establish, now detective, you recall that I reached out to you during the criminal investigation. You also recall you weren't really interested in hearing about what was going on. In fact, you closed us off in that conversation. You had already made up your mind that my client was guilty. Is that true? In other words, the detective can be, if they've already made up their mind you're guilty, that could be used to benefit your case. But if you have a legitimate, truth-seeking detective, it may also stop a charge from coming against you. We've had cases where we're able to share what's called exculpatory evidence with that detective, and that has allowed the detective to kind of back off and say, okay, maybe he didn't do this. I'm not going to pursue a warrant. I'm going to stop the case right where it's at. So it's really important that you understand that information, if it comes from your attorney, can very much help you. But if it comes from you, if you're under a criminal investigation, you or a loved one, it can actually be used against you and manipulated against you in some way. So what are the rules? Number 1, don't talk to the detective on the phone or in person. Rule number 2, never believe that the detective only wants to hear your side of the story. Rule number 3, be careful about talking about the facts to any other person, including any witnesses, specifically other witnesses. Rule number 4, filter all your communication through an experienced criminal defense attorney. Finally, rule number 5, don't panic. Don't panic and don't run. Okay? The best thing to do is get out in front of this and make sure you have an attorney begin to lay the groundwork and foundation of a strong defense to possibly even stop this criminal investigation from turning into a full-blown criminal case. All right. Now listen, I promised you a free ebook, What to Do If You've Been Charged with a Crime in Texas. All you have to do is click down into the link portion, the actual text portion of this YouTube video, and you'll see a section in there where there's a link for you to click through and put your email address. I'll be happy to send you over that free ebook. And if you liked what you heard here today, subscribe to our YouTube channel. I'll be happy to send you more great content just like this. We'll see you next time.